Hello and welcome. My name is Vanessa Ortali. I am the founder of the Ladies Community and Heart and Mind Talks. And today I bring to you another interview for our online summit, The One. And the theme of this summit is one with purpose, one with self, and one with others. And I am thrilled to bring to you Jennifer Evans. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. We get to speak and vibe at last.
I know, right? She's off in the UK, and so we're bringing in some UK energy. But Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Human Accelerator, and we're going to explain what all that means. But what we're going to dive into in this interview is Jennifer's journey, how she got to where she is right now, and we're going to talk about flow state. How do you get into it? How do you tap into your subconscious so that you can be at your best and reach peak performance? So we're going to get all scientific today if you are a person that needs some of that scientific background. I think Jennifer really merges the scientific and the spiritual so well, which is why I'm thrilled to have you. So welcome again. And I'm excited to dive in and hear more about your story. So let's start with that. How did you become interested in this? Like, what is your story?
Um, yeah, it's a really interesting question. I guess life experience and contrast, and the universe kicking my behind until I did the work that I really needed to do. Um, I guess taking it all the way back, even as a child, there was just an incredible capability that I had to feel people's energy, really read human behavior, body language, and specifically feel people's energy. I guess some people would classify it as an empath, but there was certainly a profound part of me that always felt as a young child that I didn't quite fit in, and I would be able to walk into a room and feel that energy if something wasn't right, if something wasn't aligned. And yeah, I had some interesting experiences as a child, really, due to that. And that really kind of helped me enhance and develop what I call my spidey senses, my ability to interact and work with humans. And at the age of 13, my parents divorced. It was quite a blow to me because very quickly I realized a lot of the foundations that my life had been built upon, or my perceptions of the life that I had built upon, were not quite accurate or true. And a couple of years, or just I think 18 months after that, I really felt very disconnected to the world, to my family and the people that were around me, and tried to commit suicide. And that was a massive turning point for me, because I realized even at a young age that there had to be a better way to understand how to connect with other people. I profoundly felt that the school system had failed me and other people in that. We're not taught how to thrive. We're not given the skills to go out into the big world and to thrive. So when you look at it, the basic foundations of humans thriving, especially nowadays, the need to connect has overridden the need to survive. We've had to develop different ways to mobilize without wanting to kill each other. We don't have that fight or flight mechanism attuned as we used to. And so the need to connect now, and the need to co-create and communicate, and to understand consciousness and how the mind works, and how to deal with conflict resolution, or even wealth creation, the fundamental things for us to actually thrive. I believe the education system has failed us over, and I could go down a rabbit hole into all of my research as to why, but I'll keep away from that subject.
And does that impact how you, and maybe you'll talk about this, but how does that impact, you have a son?
I
And so
do.
knowing that, do you homeschool? How do you make sure that he thrives in that environment?
Yeah, it's an interesting part of the journey, actually. Conscious parenting is one of the modules, or certainly one of the things I'll be putting out there. I was very fortunate to meet Elena Cardone, Grant Cardone's wife, last summer, and we've agreed to vibe out on a podcast about conscious parenting. So that's something that I'll definitely will be working with people, especially corporate people, where we're trying to juggle all of these things, or entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs that are trying to create a legacy and create a life for themselves and their children, and then have this conflict and this guilt and shame, which is programmed into us at quite a young age. But the profound turning point for me was 17. Very suddenly, my dad was taken ill and died, which was really profound for me, because I left school at 15. I was a July baby and left home soon as I turned 16. And so his death hit me pretty hard, because I felt like I'd never demonstrated to him who I really was. He had experienced the teenager who had gone through a divorce and then left home and had got herself into all these precarious situations, but never really got to see what I was capable of. And so at the age of 18, I started building businesses and went really hardcore into my career, due to social idealisms, doing what I thought I should do, or what I perceived he felt that I should do, or trying to prove myself in the world. And so threw myself into business, and interestingly enough, into a world that was very academic, highly technical, very male dominated. I ended up in senior executive recruitment in energy and infrastructure projects. So some of the biggest projects and most complex projects on the planet, I would be working with the executive teams of and recruiting people to deliver. And so I think, looking back now and joining the dots as you can, it was almost, I was trying to prove to myself that I wasn't academic and I hadn't studied, I didn't go to university, but I could still help these people. And it was like I was trying to prove something. And I ended up building an empire in my early 20s, had it all, the cars, the houses, multi-million turnover business, and woke up one day at the age of 29 and realized something profound had shifted in me. I'll never forget waking up one day and thinking, who am I? Why have I built this thing? I wasn't connected to the people that worked for me. I was working over 100 hours a week. I was traveling to Australia, Malaysia, all over the UK and Europe. And in my mind, had always set up this business to help serve other people, help them reach their career goals, or to set up their own divisions within corporate companies. So at this point, I'm working with FTSE businesses and fortune companies, and really kind of big client organizations that were delivering multi-billion pound projects, but then realized that I wasn't fulfilled. So I'd set out to serve people, but the people that I was serving were really disconnected, very unhappy, had major relationship challenges themselves. And the higher they climbed the corporate ladder and seemed to fulfill what they perceived were their dreams in their careers, the more disconnected and dysfunctional and unhappy people were. And it really reminded me, I felt trapped. I felt like I'd gone back to this childhood era where I could feel this energy in people, and yet there was nothing that I could do to support them. Just recruiting people in a team just actually enhanced their stress, because then they had more people to actually manage. And it really became profoundly apparent to me that leadership is not taught, and actually you can't lead others without mastering your own mind. Because for me, if you're not in control of your own mind and understand your own subconscious program, who is it that's really showing up as the leader? It's the program, and the program is downloaded and installed by us really before the age of 7. So we're not consciously showing up as the leaders that most people want to be. And teams were very dysfunctional because we're not taught how to communicate, or that cognitive diversity is essential to performance, and people who think differently, we're not taught, are good for us. It's, we alienate people. If people think the same as us, or understand us, or share what we perceive to be the same values, then we end up recruiting them into the business, and that can become the biggest challenge, because we end up with silos or groupthink, or actually we end up with a team with all the same thinking preferences. And then what happens is everyone knows what to do more than the other, which is just human nature. So at 29, I woke up in the February and had this profound insight of whose life am I living, because this doesn't even feel like me. And then
Did you feel disconnected at that point as well? Like you're working with people that are disconnected and you felt disconnected also?
Yeah, it took me
Yeah.
back to childhood, and it had a profound impact on me because I realized what I'd done is manifested a life that was a mirror image of what
Mm.
was happening to me in childhood. Whereas what I'd intended to do was actually go into an industry and try and make change and serve people. And I was to an extent, but I could see that, I would put in a managing director and that would be their dream career, or move them into a CEO role. But actually, I wasn't making any profound change in the culture, in the performance, in the leadership, in the connection of humans or teams and how they delivered. And a couple of months later, really randomly, I actually went to go and freeze my eggs. My CFO at the time was adamant that if I wasn't going to have children in my 30s and I was going to sell the business first, that I needed to go and take care of that. And his best friend was a fertility doctor. So off I go thinking, okay. And actually got told that my hormone levels were half what they should be at 29 and they were about to drop again. So if I was going to have children, I needed to start straight away. Now, that had a profound impact on me because I didn't actually think I wanted children at the time, but having had this epiphany that I'd created a life I didn't actually feel that I fitted in, I realized very quickly that I did want to be a mother. And my subconscious programming was that you needed to be married before you had children. So off I went by the November, I was married in Mexico. 28th of November, get married. 3rd of December, first day of my fertility window, I fell pregnant naturally, which was quite a shock to the system because at the same time I also discovered that my parents were not married when they had me, which I had just assumed. So there was some real inner work that had to be done around that. And I ended up becoming a single parent a year after Skylar was born because I realized that actually I didn't want him to grow up in a relationship where it wasn't as it should be, that there were two people that were, completely aligned and in love and had the same future goals and aspirations and ambitions. And so for me, I took the decision to completely blow up my whole life, really, change career, become a single parent, move out the marital home and start building a business that was around helping humans thrive. And so I spent 4.5 years going down many rabbit holes, looking at everything from psychological safety, cognitive diversity, neuroscience, neurochemistry, so conversational intelligence and how to use the chemical flow in the brain to help humans connect with one another using mirror neurons. And then flow psychology and self-image psychology and trust and all of those things came into it. And what I realized was, how the hell do humans even have a chance, really?
I
How do
think
we
this
even have a
often.
chance? We have this program, ancestral trauma comes in, our parents are trying to do the best they can, but let's be honest, we have generations and generations who have not been taught how the mind works or what consciousness is or how to connect with one another or how to embrace cognitive diversity and how to shift our thinking and our communication style to connect with other people. And that really profoundly shifted things for me because I realized that I could be a conscious parent at home, but my son had to still operate in this system. I call it the 3D system, and I was ascending and becoming more and more conscious and doing the inner work. I went through timeline therapy and various different things to really seek out who I was and what my purpose is.
Can we talk more about that? Because what did the work look like for you?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's such a broad term that we always say, oh, like you got to do the work. But if there's people listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I know I got to do the work, but what do I actually have to do?
For me, it was about going deep into the beliefs that had created the patterns that I kept manifesting. So why was it that I would find clients consistently who were disconnected, or what was driving me? What was the purpose? And I realized, if I'm honest with you, it was embracing both support and challenge. So everything in this universe lives in equilibrium, including our mind. We need equanimity, we need balance. And so memories that are not dealt with become stored in the subconscious mind and also physically within the body. And until we can collapse those charges and see both sides of things and look at where the polarizations are, then we don't have a chance in ascending and accepting those things. So I went deep into my value system. So we have a value system in the subconscious mind, not social idealisms, but my true value system of who I am and what had created all of these manifestations, because we keep getting sent the same lesson until we look at why we need to have the lesson. And I'd had some profound lessons in life. I'd made some interesting decisions to escape reality, self-medication, and using alcohol and various different things to shut out the trauma that I had had. And so in the end, the contrast had become so severe for me that I had no choice but to look internally and to do that work. And so it was looking at my purpose and my value system, and all of that, if I'm honest with you, is always inevitably from the voids that we've had in childhood. So my highest values are communication and human connection, serving others, but serving others to grow their business. There was always a purpose behind it for me: self-mastery, and freedom. And so I set about looking at everything to do with how humans connect, how humans behave, how we can use certain tools, inner tools, to actually get there. And so that's how Human Accelerators was developed, through my desire to want to show humans how to thrive, giving them the inner technology and tools that were not given in the education system. And one of my mentors once said to me, miracles only exist until proven by science, and then they become technology. And what I realized was, I'm not trying to give anybody a process or a system that worked for me. What I'm giving people is the inner technology and tools that already lie within them to be able to thrive. It's about peeling away all of the labels and the subconscious programming and just giving them the ability to understand consciousness, how the mind works, how to discover their why by looking at their value system, their purpose, and then enabling them to go on the journey of becoming a leader. Because for me, until you master your own mind and you know who you really are, how you think, and where your blind spots are, it's very, very difficult to become a true leader and embrace other people's thinking and appreciate that they also have a subconscious program that's driving a lot of the behavior. So for me, the science of superhuman, which just so happened to be the SOS-H, the SOS for humans, was born. And it uses everything from psychological safety, which is Google's #1 parameter in building high performing teams. They did a project called Project Aristotle, which looked at 50 years of research and 180 of the highest performing teams, and that one baseline principle of psychological safety, which basically means showing up as your authentic self without being in fear of being punished or rejected for being who you are, is living in authenticity.
How do you help other people feel safe and feel like they can be their authentic self as a leader?
So for me, I don't believe that you can create psychological safety in teams or yourself until you do the work to understand what your values are and who you are and feel like you can live in authenticity. And the reason for that is the subconscious program it drives 95% of what we do, but it's there to protect us. And until you can understand who you are and what drives you and where your own blind spots are and actually own them, how can you be psychologically safe to show up as your real self? Because the program's always going, beware, be careful, don't say this, or are they attacking you? And it's only when you can really live in that alignment and know your value system and show up and be authentic that the subconscious mind just decides to just slow down a little bit and stop interfering with you, because authenticity is what enables us to show up in the world as who we really are. So when you're becoming a leader based upon social idealisms, or you've done a leadership development program that tells you to be this or to be that or communicate in this way, that's other people injecting their values on you. It's not you leading from a place of value alignment and purpose and fulfillment, and also owning that we all have the dark and the light, we all live in equanimity. And when we don't, and we have these polarizations, that's when those behaviors and those contrasting moments from the universe show up. So I decided to go end to end, all the way from psychological safety, neuroscience, neurochemistry, and flow psychology, all the way through to quantum physics. So showing people how their own thinking and their own consciousness shows up in the collective conscious in a culture. And therefore, if you can't own that you're part of that collective, and how you show up every day has a profound impact on the energy that you attract into you, and how we are all quantumly entangled because we are all one. And until we embrace that, but really understand how the mind works, then we can't reach ultimate performance. And so I went on a journey of deep learning. I never thought I was a geek. I am a total geek.
Me too, girl.
And I love that, and I accept and own that about me. But I needed to really prove all of my theories through science, and then go and meet some of the people in the world that I respected and test my thinking. So I set out with an intention to meet leaders like Sir Richard Branson, and even Steve Wozniak of Apple, and Kevin Harrington and Grant Cardone, and all of these people, and just test my research, what made them different. And every single one of those people had significantly contrasting moments in life that made them go inside and look at what had built the program that was showing up, and enable them to realize that that wasn't really them. Some people did that younger. So Richard, for example, was very young when he broke out of the system, as I call it. And other people were later on in life and had, Grant Cardone, for example, some really significant challenges with addiction, and manifesting real contrasting challenges in life to enable them to wake up, as I call it. So that was really the journey that led me to go deep into the human psyche, human behavior, and everything around how the mind works, so that we can just thrive. Because I don't believe that people have to go through what I went through to be able to do this work. So human accelerators and the science of superhuman is not teaching you anything that you don't know. We innately have this ability within us, but we've never really been shown as a race as to how to do that. And we are evolving at the fastest rate in history. We live in a VUCA environment, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The only thing we can be 100% sure of is that change is coming, and it's coming fast, the fastest it's ever come. And I just believe that our children need to be given those tools, and the fastest way to transform the world is through business culture and also sports. It transcends nations, and culture and community is the way that we do this. And so I feel like business and sports is the quickest way to impact that change.
Very cool. When you talk about thrive, what does thrive look like and feel like for people as a goal to achieve,
So
or something to move towards?
So thriving is not about trying to look for one end of the stick and only embracing being positive and being happy. Your brain knows that it can't live in that state permanently anyway. So people that are seeking one end of that stick and not embracing both support and challenge end up with quite profound contrasting moments in life. So for me, thriving is about giving human beings the ability to connect effectively with other people, to learn how to communicate who they are, how they feel, but not do that in a judgmental way, to do it from a place of equanimity where you understand that other human beings also have a program and also have different thinking preferences, and that they will show up as one person on one day and a different person on another day, given the environment that they live in. So for me, it's about learning how to co-create, how to communicate, how to connect, how to wealth create as well. The school system doesn't teach us how to build businesses or how to create wealth or how to invest money, but also deal with conflict resolution, conflict within and conflict without. And I think when we understand consciousness and how the mind really works, it's a profound insight to learning who we really are and who's showing up on any given day, and knowing when we're triggered and being able to say to somebody in a conversation, I'm triggered, not because of them. Nobody has the ability to trigger you. Our perceptions give us the ability to polarize somebody in that moment. Nobody can make you feel a certain way. We choose to allow ourselves to feel a certain way given our perception of what somebody else is doing. And so when I think, when you teach people how the mind works and to be able to arrive at a situation, not in judgment, but just a place of authenticity in self and learning how to communicate, that's how we thrive together. And you can't thrive on your own. Nobody does anything on their own. We don't build businesses alone. Even reading somebody else's book on business is not doing it alone, in my opinion. That's co-creating. And we're just, in my opinion, not taught that in the education system or in leadership development programs. I've dealt with some of the biggest companies on the planet, and inevitably their leadership development programs are teaching people their version or somebody else's system of how to lead. That for me is not authentic leadership. You've got to know who you are and where your blind spots are to be able to show up as an authentic leader. And when we can create authentic leaders and conscious cultures and also conscious parenting, that's how we transform our relationships around us, not by trying to change other people, but by doing the inner work ourselves. We shift our vibration and energy, and then other people can connect and co-create with us.
So, if someone wants to take steps to thrive and make this a reality for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things that you would recommend for them to do and try?
Certainly, do you know, this may sound a bit woo-woo to people, but the one thing that I had never had was self-love. I was always trying to serve everybody else, looking for love outside of me and looking for acceptance outside of me, and that never works. So being kind to yourself, first of all, and accepting that you are human, and everything in your past that has led you to be here is not a coincidence. Whatever's showing up on the outside is a manifestation of what's going on the inside. So taking some time and actually saying to yourself that you're going to love yourself enough to do the inner work is the first part of the journey. Because if you're doing it for somebody else, you're in a relationship and you're trying to change, or you're doing it because you perceive that you should do it, is never going to work. The lessons are going to still keep coming. So accepting that you're human and you also have a program and parts of parenting, and 50% of our genes are switched on through environment and language anyway. So we can't blame our parents. Only 50% of who we end up being is transcription genes. So accepting that you're human and wanting to do the work from a place of self-love and showing up for other people and serving other people is always a great way. But really owning what's around you, first of all. Why is this consistently showing up, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's through the recruitment of people in your team or problems in your culture? We don't have business problems. We have inner problems that show up in business. And so just that step of accepting ourselves and having enough self-love to want to do the work is a huge part in the journey. And learning to meditate and learning to self-reflect is a big part of that. For me, looking at the value system, my value system, our subconscious value system is huge. We all have it. And when we live in our highest values, we operate out of something called the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive brain, which is where wisdom and insight and strategy and empathy and compassion lives. The lower mind is where we are in the amygdala, which is where we get amygdala hijack and we're fear-based, and the fight and flight kicks in. Most people are living a life based of social idealisms, which is other people's projected values onto you. And having a look around you and really owning whether you are building a business based upon your highest values. When you hear yourself saying shoulds or woulds or coulds or have to or need to, that is typically a projection of somebody else's values into your life or into your business. When you get to do things and when you love what you do, The things that people don't have to be on your case all the time to do are traditionally your highest values. They're the things that you do first. They're the things that you do without being nagged or having to think about, because your subconscious program, without you knowing it, will drive 95% of your behavior to fulfill that value system. So if you're saying have to, got to, should do, need to, that's not highest values. The things that you love to do in the world, people don't have to ask you or pay for you to do. And when you build a business out of your own value system, you get paid handsomely just for showing up and being the real you. So owning who you are and really looking at what's happening around you, what keeps manifesting, there's always a pattern. And that's typically to get you to look into the shadows and what needs to be brought to the light. That for me is the most profound step on the journey, because when you own that and have enough self-love to do that, that's when everything starts to roll, and the subconscious mind will then throw up the things that need to be loved and accepted. And when we disown parts of ourselves or try and hide parts of ourselves, or leave behind the old self, like I was doing by changing careers, that's when the lessons keep coming and they become more and more and more profound until we wake up to the work that we need to do.
How else does our programming show up in our lives? How can we tell if we're living in that programming? I know for me, I really noticed I was living in the programming, number one, through my emotions. I started to really pay attention. When am I feeling bad? When am I feeling good? And if I'm feeling bad, what was I just telling myself? So when I really started to dive into my internal dialogue and questioning everything, why do I believe this? Why do I want this? Why do I want this person to act in this way? What am I looking for from that person to give me? And really just looking at why I wanted everything, because we want things because we believe that in the having of them we'll feel better. And so instead of constructing that externally, really coming internally and questioning how how does this program show up for other people that you've seen in working with your clients?
It shows up in every area of life. So most people focus on business or, you know, parenting or one area of life. We have 7 areas of life that we should be looking at all times. The most profound thing for me to explain is that we have something called self-image psychology, and we have a psycho-cybernetic loop. So very much like on a central heating system or in an aeroplane, we set that to autopilot, and there is a certain parameter where we can move above the loop or below the loop, but we will always get brought back into where that program is set. And so before the age of 7, we don't have a conscious mind, so everything we are taking in becomes part of the program. That gets further reinforced by the age of 7 to about 25, when our neural pathways start to fire. And our self-image psychology, our self-image, is also created really before the age of 7. So that profoundly impacts who we show up as in our adult life. And no one tells us, oh, by the way, you know, who you are isn't really who you are, it's part of the program, so let's do some subconscious rewiring and consciously decide who we are. So honestly, the program shows up in every area of life at all times until we start to accept that we can consciously decide who we are, and we do have a value system, but we need to link that value system to our work and who we spend our time with. And you know, nobody really ever teaches us as well that it's okay to have boundaries, to communicate that this is okay for me and this is not okay for me, and I'm not judging you if you want to be different, but this is just my set of boundaries. And so traditionally this shows up in every area of life for every human being I've ever come into contact with, because you know, the education system changed, you know, in the 20th century, purposely, I might add. And so we're now living in the 21st century, where change is the most rapid it's ever been. Everybody is looking for technology for the answers, but they forget that the human mind is what created the technology. So consciousness is first and foremost. You know, robots are not going to take over humans if humans don't even know how the field operates, or where, memories are retrieved. We don't have a retrieval system in the brain for memory. A lot of what we do is it lives in the field, and if we can't explain consciousness, then a robot's certainly not going to be able to do that. So we have to own that we are creating our external reality based upon our internal reality. And this shows up in every area of life for every human being, because 95% of what we do is run by the subconscious program. So the short answer is everyone in every area of life. And so that is why I say the real work is the inner work. And when we accept that we are human and that we are polarized and we do judge others, and we have to own who we are. Every one of us has the superhero and the villain. We have, I think it's 4,600 plus behavioral traits, and at some point in life we demonstrate every single one of them. Otherwise that trait would die out. That's how a species evolves, and that's how the world evolves, and how we live in equanimity. So owning it and accepting it gives us an appreciation for other people.
Yeah, I often think that our programs and in our interactions, it's just program against program. And so that's why when you said within to be the best leader is really to step into that authenticity, I think that is such an important piece of this puzzle. And because if you're not in your authenticity, you're not breaking that cycle. And then it's just program against program, and we're just interacting with each other's fears and each other's insecurities and conditioning. And when we can break that and step into our authenticity, you kind of like spark a light in somebody else, and their authenticity starts to buzz also.
Absolutely. What happens is it's just trigger to trigger, isn't it? You see it in teams and corporates all the time. We're run by the program. One person gets triggered, another person's triggered, and it just continues going on. When we make the decision to do the inner work and to really look at our why and who we are and what our purpose and our values are, but also where and why we get triggered, where's that coming from? We shift our own vibration, and we know now that everything in this universe has a frequency, it's a vibration, and we shift simply by accepting that we all need to do the inner work, and we all need to really discover our who and our why and own those parts of us. The minute we're trying to disown any part of us, then inevitably we're going to get our ass kicked for doing so, because it's the shadow work. It needs to be brought to the light. So that simple step is a profound step for human beings, but we're not taught that that's okay. We're not taught that it's okay to accept that we have had dark times and to own that. And we judge other people and we try and disown those traits in us. And the minute that we can have compassion for the fact that other people have a program too, we shift our own vibration and our own energy, and people naturally shift around you. It makes me smile when leaders say, I've told them what they need to do and they just won't change. It's like, well, no one's ever going to do that. We have to do the work and change ourselves. And when we move that energy and we start to own who we are and have compassion for the parts of us that we've been trying to disown, then we can have compassion for the fact that other people have that too. And we stop the judgment and we start to actually listen. We're not even taught how to listen effectively. Most people are listening to react, not listening to connect. So they listen to judge or reject and not listen to connect. When you're really listening to connect, human beings feel that. We can still disagree. Doesn't mean that we don't disagree, but when you're listening to connect, that energy and that vibration puts us in a very, very different place. And then we start to create that psychological safety, because we're not listening to reject other people and they feel that. And human beings profoundly feel that. We are human beings, yes, but we have a higher self and we have a higher purpose and an inner being. And we do feel energy. We've been around for a long, long time, and communication really was designed to mask that energy and that frequency. And so now what we need to do is to rewire and rewire the program, accept who we are, live in authenticity, but actually understand that every time we communicate with another human being, we're using neurochemistry. There is a chemical release, and we can either release oxytocin, which enables mirror neurons so we can bond, or we can release cortisol, which is never going to end up with any kind of positive human connection, because that fires the distrust networks in the brain, and it shuts down our ability to connect and to listen anyway. So as a leader, when you're doing this work on self and you understand how the mind works, we consciously shift our communication and neurochemistry because we are looking to connect and co-create and listen to connect and not reject other people. There are many leadership development programs out there, all teaching a process or a system that other people perceive to be right. What I'm trying to do is just show humans that they've already got this ability within them, and it's about peeling back the labels and the programming, and just showing them that the inner technology is there. We all have the same ability, we all have the same mind, and amplifying performance through consciousness is the way that we get to do that. And also I think it's important in parenting and teaching our children that as well.
Yeah, 100%. That's also where, when I started the ladies community, I started the community to help bring people together. But then I
Mhm.
noticed there was this gap where people were looking for community for the wrong reasons. They were looking for community to make them feel whole and complete. And when I started asking them, what are you looking for in friends? What are important qualities that you're looking for? They threw out words like loyalty and honesty. And I go, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Like, well,
Social
loyalty,
idealism.
yeah, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, loyalty means they'll respond to my texts, and when I need them, they'll be there. And I'm going, I don't know that that's actually what you're looking for. And we started to really dive deeper into, is that what you're looking for? Does that make you feel safe? Does that make you feel better that they're there? Are you looking for them to make you feel complete and whole? Or, what are you doing when they don't text you back? That's a trigger. So are you
Yeah.
looking for people that just don't trigger you? Or are you looking for people that you can grow from and continue to grow and evolve regardless of what they do? Because we can't control other people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
this is what we're taught to do. We project our perceptions onto other people in both intimate relationships and any kind of, external relationships, friends and work colleagues. And when you actually get to owning who you are and why you're triggered, it's nothing to do with them. They're just showing up as the best version of them. 99% of the population are doing the best they can with the program they were given and the skills and the tools that they know how to use. You've got to be quite a psychopath to turn up as a parent or in a work situation and think, I am going to consciously not connect with this human being and be as difficult as I can. That's not, we're humans. We were designed to connect. The need to connect now is overridden the need to survive because of our evolution and polyvagal nerve and various different things. And that's why you're seeing the rate of suicide increase so exponentially now, especially in young men, because we need to connect. We were built, we didn't even know mirror neurons existed in the brain 30 years ago. It was a complete fluke in Italy that scientists found this, and it proved that the mind and human beings, we don't have mirror neurons and bonding neurons to be able to connect if we weren't supposed to connect as a species. And so everything that we were taught is not with the primary objective of thriving through co-creating and connecting and communicating and supporting one another, especially in corporate business. It's a dog eat dog world, and that whole climbing the ladder. Other people think the only way to do that is by treading over people to do it. Not in every company, but I'm sort of generalizing here. We're certainly not taught that, if we teach everybody else how to thrive and empower them and have compassion for them and learn how to communicate, and embrace cognitive diversity, that's going to absolutely exponentially increase performance. But yet it's true. And so when we jump into things like flow psychology and flow state, I work with some incredible human beings. Dr. DeMartini, #1 human behavioral specialist, is a mentor of mine. I'm working with Stephen Kotler, who is kind of the new, I guess, god of flow psychology now. And everyone's looking at ways of hacking, mind hacks or hacking flow or biohacking and all of these things. And yeah, you can do that to a certain extent, but it's not sustainable. For me, doing the inner work and getting to a place of authenticity and priming the brain and collapsing those emotional charges by understanding what's triggering us and bringing that stuff into the light is a way then of living in authenticity. So when we can hack flow, then we can stay there because we're not consciously, not always consciously and unconsciously in fear of being caught out or being rejected or being judged. When you're truly in authenticity, you appreciate that you're not going to be right for everybody else based upon their program, but you show up as the best version of you. And then when we can get into these states of consciousness like flow, it's easier to stay there and to get groups into flow because everybody is constantly trying to iterate and innovate and curate, but do that through connection and co-creation, and therefore flow is enabled and much easier. But when we're trying to do that on our own and do that with conflict, it's a very difficult state to continue. And it's worth knowing that if we can get into flow, we're talking about increased productivity per person per day of 500%. We only have to work 1 day a week compared to other teams. Learning capability goes up by 490%, creativity 470%. But make no mistake, the work begins with you. It's not easy, but it is worth it. And I just felt that there is no, particularly any other females that are using sciences, especially quantum physics and neuroscience and biopsychology as a way of communicating that there is no difference. Science and spirituality, we're all looking at the same thing. We are all one and we are all connected, and you can't be the best version of you and create exponential results in business without doing the inner work and really understanding who you are and what's driving you, and also where your blind spots are. We're all human, we're not perfect. Nobody and if we were, we'd transcend anyway. Our job would be done.
But honestly, I feel like you explain the science so well that it really helps people who are of that scientific brain to better understand what people are talking about in the spiritual world that they may not necessarily resonate and connect with. So I'm so grateful that you've put in the time and work to really understand the science and now put it together with your human accelerator. If people want to find you, where can they find you? Where can they get more information so that they can learn more of what you've been studying for years?
So the website is humanaccelerators.com, or Instagram, it's jennifer.l.evans, or traditionally LinkedIn's quite a good way of connecting with me. Having been a headhunter for 15 years, I'm pretty used to using LinkedIn, and it's Jennifer Evans. If you type in human accelerators anywhere into Google, I've trademarked the name, so I'm the only one, and hopefully you'll find me. I love connecting with other human beings. My highest value is communication and connection. I love helping people thrive, particularly in business. I love seeing people step out into their full power and live in their value system, but also grow a culture and a team where people thrive as well. So always open to conversations and co-creating and vibing with people.
Yeah, so great. Do you have any other message or tip that you want to leave people with as we finish out this interview?
Yeah, I guess community. We can't do this on our own, and what you're creating here is fundamental to human beings thriving, because you're creating a platform where people can show up, ask questions, be honest about what their challenges are, and communicate. So, but just, I would say, choose your tribe wisely and do it based upon values and energy, not because you perceive that somebody else is ahead of you, or you're putting people on pedestals and yourself in a pit. Everyone has the same capability. And I would say seek out people that feel right to you, not necessarily just based upon credibility or competencies, because I've met some of the most capable people on the planet and then realized that they're just not in alignment with who I am and who my values are. And so I think finding a tribe, loving them hard, showing up as your best self, but also contributing as much as you expect to get from those people is so critical for us all being there for one another, especially women and women with children. We judge ourselves so hard, and there is so much guilt and shame on this planet through various different means, including the education system. Be kind to yourself and be kind to one another is probably one of the
That's
biggest.
perfect. That's a great note to end this interview on. You've given us so much information on the brain and communicating and leadership that I know people will be able to implement. So I'm going to leave you with Jennifer's message. Go out there and be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Thank
And
you, Jennifer.
thrive.
And thrive. Yeah. So go check her out, Human Accelerators with an S, and reach out if you have any questions. I'm sure she'll be happy to work with you. We'll chat with you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Take care. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.